One of the most important features of the Stafer electronic motor is that it has no adjustment screws for setting the limit switches. In addition, it is possible to memorize 3 limit switch positions, an essential feature for operating louver rolling shutters. Another feature is the automatic emergency locking during the upward motion, useful in case you have forgotten sliding chute bolts inserted or in case of rolling shutters icy and jammed. Moreover, the Stafer electronic motor has a special software with specific functions suitable for the installation of awnings, both square bar and cassette. Other special functions can be activated using the appropriate wind and light sensors. The Stafer electronic motor, model RX.E3, can be controlled either only by radio transmitter or by both radio transmitter and a wall-mounted push-button switch. In case you would like to control it only by a radio transmitter, you need to connect only the blue wire, the brown wire and the ground. In this case, the black wire and the gray wire are not to be connected to anything. In case you would also like to use a push-button, you need to connect all the wires in this way. After mounting the motor and fastening the rolling shutter, proceed as follows. Remember that each operation can be done with the 596TX radio transmitter, with the 595TX100 simple radio transmitter, or, if present, by a wall-mounted push-button switch. Installation by the 596 radio transmitter. First off, the power supply must be switched off and then on again. Within 50 seconds, press briefly prog on the back, pointing towards the motor. Press up. If the rolling shutter moves in the opposite direction, that is downwards, press prog and right away up again. Move the rolling shutter to an intermediate position. Press stop 3 times, the motor makes an up-down movement. Now, depending on the application you are in, you need to press the up button a certain number of times. In this case, since you have a louver rolling shutter, press up only 1 time. Immediately afterwards, the motor repeats upwards the same number of movements as you have set. If they correspond, press stop 3 times. If they do not correspond, press the up button again as many times as per the desired setting. The motor makes an up-down movement. Now move the rolling shutter to the lower limit switch. With the louver rolling shutters, the shutter must be lowered until all the slats are fully opened. Once you have reached the ideal position, press stop 3 times. The motor makes an up-down movement. Now move the rolling shutter to the upper limit switch. Once you have reached the ideal position, press stop 3 times. Alternatively, if the shutter has stoppers on, you can also memorize the upper limit switch by contact. Move the rolling shutter until the stoppers make contact with the bottom of the housing box. Immediately afterwards, release the up button. The motor automatically calibrates the position of the upper limit switch. The motor makes a down-up movement. Wait 2 seconds until the motor makes another down-up movement. Finished. If by any chance the position of the limit switches is not exactly the desired one, don't worry, because it can be recalibrated at a later time with the appropriate function. The aforementioned procedure can also be performed using the small radio transmitter 595TX100 or a wall-mounted button. See the instruction manual you can download from the Stafer website. Fine adjustment of the upper limit switch. If the position of the upper limit switch has been acquired by contact with stoppers, it cannot be adjusted manually. In case, on the contrary, you have defined the position of the limit switch by a radio transmitter, it can be modified in this way. Move the rolling shutter to an intermediate position. Briefly press the menu button on the back of the radio transmitter. 2 dash marks appear on the display. Press down one time. 01 appears on the display, which is the number of the function. Press stop. The motor makes an up-down movement. Press up. The rolling shutter moves to the upper limit switch. After the head stopped, adjust the new position by pressing up or down. Once you have found the position, briefly press prog. The motor makes a down-up movement. Briefly press menu to exit. Finished! The aforementioned procedure can also be performed using the small radio transmitter 595TX100 or a wall-mounted button. See the instruction manual you can download from the Stafer website. Fine adjustment of the lower limit switch. Move the rolling shutter to an intermediate position. Briefly press the menu button on the back of the radio transmitter. 2 dash marks appear on the display. Press the down button one time. 01 appears on the display, which is the number of the function. Press stop. The motor makes an up-down movement. Press down. The rolling shutter moves to the lower limit switch. After the head stopped, adjust the new position by pressing up or down. Once you have found the position, briefly press prog. The motor makes an up-down movement. Briefly press menu to exit. Finished! The aforementioned procedure can also be performed using the small radio transmitter 595TX100 or a wall-mounted button. See the instruction manual you can download from the Stafer website. Slat tilting function, that is micro-moving the motor in small twitches. This function is very useful in lower rolling shutters because it allows, with the appropriate buttons, to tilt the slats according to your needs or to adjust the shutter precisely. This function is already active and is set to level 2, which provides for smaller and more precise movements. You can change the precision level or deactivate the function, setting it to level 1. To do this, proceed as follows. Move the shutter to an intermediate position. Briefly press the menu button on the back of the radio transmitter. 2 dash marks appear on the display. Press channel -7 times. 07 appears on the display, which is the number of the function. Now press stop. The motor makes an up-down movement. Press up. The motor signals a number of times corresponding to the current value, in this case 2 as a factory setting. Press the up button as many times as per the desired setting. It may be possible to set up to level 5, but the micro movements would be wider. Let's set for example 3. Now press stop and the rolling shutter will indicate the new value with small movements, in this case 3. Briefly press menu to exit. Finished! The aforementioned procedure can also be performed using the small radio transmitter 595TX100 or a wall-mounted button. See the instruction manual you can download from the Stafer website. In case the rolling shutter is also controlled by a wall-mounted push button, it is possible to micro-move the motor in small twitches by quickly pressing one time in one direction and then immediately holding down the button in the same direction. Third limit switch function. In the case of lower rolling shutters, it is possible to decide whether to associate the third limit switch with the position of the shutter completely lowered but with the slats open, or with the position of the shutter lowered with the slats completely closed. In any case, it is better to initially associate the third limit switch with the position of the shutter completely lowered with the slats closed, as the lower limit switch has already been memorized at the beginning of installation and associated with the position of the shutter completely lowered with the slats open. Then you can invert the lower limit switch with the third limit switch at will at any time. Move the rolling shutter to an intermediate position. Briefly press the menu button on the back of the radio transmitter. 2 dash marks appear on the display. Press down 2 times. 02 appears on the display, which is the number of the function. Now press stop. The motor moves to the lower limit switch memorized at the beginning. When the motor stops, use the up and down buttons to adjust the desired position. In case of a lower rolling shutters, close the slats completely. It is better to press the appropriate keys for the micro movements. Then briefly press prog. The motor makes a brief up-down movement. Briefly press menu to exit. Finished. The aforementioned procedure can also be performed using the small radio transmitter 595TX100 or wall-mounted button. See the instruction manual you can download from the Stafer website. To recall the third limit switch, press the specific key on the radio transmitter or, if present, quickly press the wall-mounted push button 3 times down. Third limit switch inversion function. The choice of where to place the third limit switch depends on any possible centralization, home automation systems, or simply on personal preferences. Before inverting the position of the third limit switch, it is essential that it has been memorized higher than the lower limit switch. If you try to invert the third limit switch even before it has been memorized, the motor signals an error with 4 movements. You can invert the lower limit switch with the third limit switch at will and at any time by proceeding as follows. First off, move the rolling shutter to an intermediate position. Briefly press the menu button on the back of the radio transmitter. 2 dash marks appear on the display. Press down 3 times. 03 appears on the display, which is the number of the function. Press stop. The motor moves to the lower limit switch. After it has stopped, press up 1 time. The motor makes a smaller upward movement. Now the position of the lower limit switch has been inverted with the one of the third limit switch. Briefly press menu to exit. Finished. The aforementioned procedure can also be performed using the small radio transmitter 595TX100 or a wall-mounted button. See the instruction manual you can download from the Stafer website. Changing the push-button switch logic. As per the factory settings, immediately after the motor has been installed, the wall-mounted push-button always operates in pulse mode. That is, you just need to briefly press it 1 time and the motor moves to the limit position. To stop this operation, you just need to briefly press any one of the 2 buttons. However, it is possible using function number 04 to change the logic of the push-button switch, transforming it into manned mode. In this case, you need to keep the button pressed with your finger, and as soon as you leave it, the motor stops. To turn the button into manned mode, first move the shutter to an intermediate position. Briefly press the menu button on the back of the radio transmitter. 2 dash marks appear on the display. Press down 4 times. 04 appears on the display, which is the number of the function. Press stop. The motor indicates the current value. That is 1 time down for pulse mode. To select manned mode, press up. To return to pulse mode, press down. The rolling shutter indicates the new value with a small upward movement for the mend mode or 1 downward movement for the pulse mode. Quickly press menu to exit. Finished! The aforementioned procedure can also be performed using the small radio transmitter 595TX100 or a wall-mounted button. See the instruction manual you can download from the Stafer website. Cloning of radio transmitters. After associating a radio transmitter to a motor, it is possible to clone it on other radio transmitters of the same type or of a different type, so that all the radio transmitters can operate the same rolling shutter. It is essential that the radio transmitters are Stafer branded and have the same frequency. Cloning is very simple. Just stand in front of the rolling shutter with the associated radio transmitter already working, select the corresponding channel if necessary, move it to an intermediate position and briefly press the prog button on the back of the radio transmitter. The rolling shutter makes 2 small upward movements. Now take the new radio transmitter with the empty memory and press stop or up. The rolling shutter makes 2 small movements, and from now on both radio transmitters will operate it. Of course, it is also possible to clone a model 595TX100 radio transmitter that has already been memorized by pressing the hidden prog button on its back, and after the rolling shutter has made 1 movement, by pressing the stop or up button on any other radio transmitter. You can also delete one of the cloned radio transmitters. Simply carry out the same cloning procedure, pressing up after the 2 movements. The previously working radio transmitter will be deleted. Cloning between a wide variety of Stafer radio devices is possible. Reset by radio transmitter. It is possible to reset by radio transmitter both the motors with built-in radio receiver RX.E3 and electronic motors RX.E3. Move the rolling shutter to an intermediate position. With the 596 radio transmitter, briefly press the menu button on its back. 2 dash marks appear on the display. Press up 2 times and down 9 times. 29 appears on the display, which is the number of the function. Press stop. The motor makes 6 double movements. Wait for the rolling shutter to stop and right away press up 2 times. The rolling shutter signals with a movement. Press menu to exit. Now everything is reset. With the 595TX100 radio transmitter there is a similar procedure. Move the rolling shutter to an intermediate position. Quickly press the hidden prog button on its back 3 times, letting the red LED light up. Then press up 2 times and down 9 times. Press stop. The motor makes 6 movements. Wait for the rolling shutter to stop and right away press up 2 times. The rolling shutter signals with a double movement. Press the prog button again 3 times quickly to exit. Now everything is reset. In case there is no memorized and working radio transmitter, you need to reset the system by wire or, if present, by the wall-mounted push-button switch. For the reset by wire, first switch off the power supply. Connect the black wire and the gray wire to the brown wire of the motor, and then connect all the 3 of them to the face of the wiring system. The blue wire remains connected to the neutral of the wiring system. Switch the power supply back on again. The rolling shutter makes 6 small movements to indicate that the radio transmitter and all other possible settings have been deleted. To start the memorization again, switch the power off and on again. In case the rolling shutter is also controlled by a wall-mounted push button, you can perform the reset by the push button. See the instruction manual you can download from the Stafer website. Replacement of a radio transmitter that is no longer functioning. If you need to replace a radio transmitter that is no longer functioning with a new one that you have just purchased, you can proceed in different ways depending on the situation at hand. The first option, which is also the simplest and the quickest, can only be implemented if the motor is also controlled by a wall-mounted push-button switch. If, however, there is no button, an electrician must be called in and a temporary button must be installed as shown in the wiring diagram. Then, in both cases, proceed as follows. Move the shutter to an intermediate position. Switch off the power supply for a few seconds and then switch it back on again. Within 15 seconds, briefly and quickly press the button 3 times up and 3 times down. The motor makes a short up-down movement. Within 15 seconds, briefly press the button 1 time up and 1 time down. Wait for about 10 seconds. The motor makes a double movement. Now press the stop or up button on the new radio transmitter. The motor confirms the memorization with a double upward movement. All the settings previously memorized on the motor remain unchanged. Finished. If there are difficulties in installing a button, then it is necessary to reset the motor as described previously and proceed with the initial memorizing of the new radio transmitter.